Hello, I'm Trevor and you are watching Double Bill Movies, the home of original movies and their remakes. So finally getting around to doing my second episode, and as it's November and we've literally just had Remembrance Sunday, and on last Thursday was the actual Armistice Day, felt it appropriate to watch All Quiet on the Western Front. The original one from 1930 and this remake from 1979. Both very good films. I didn't watch them back to back. I actually watched the 1930 version on Thursday and the 79 version last night, Sunday. So I have my notes here of what I thought, and so the 1930 version, I was just blown away really, because to think of a film so old, but seeing it in high definition on Blu-ray, just how three-dimensional the picture was, the amount of depth and all the detail as well, was really impressive. Now, story-wise, both films are derived from a book of the same name, written in 1929 or published in 1929. But both versions of the film differ slightly. But the 1931 black and white one, yeah, very 3D looking, and the rousing nature of the school teacher coaxing his students who are about to graduate from school to go and sign up for the military, and how glorious it's going to be fighting this war. Now, excuse me, obviously this is all from the German perspective, and so the rousing nature and the sort of glorification of being in the army and what they're going to do and how good it's going to be for the country and everything soon changes. They get to training, and the man who used to be their local postman, who they were all friendly with, suddenly becomes their instructor and, you know, their superior officer. And I found the training sequence was about 20 minutes and was very reminiscent, although it superseded Full Metal Jacket. There was a very similar scenario going on, but then they get out to the war, the battlefields, and each lot of new recruits is assigned what they called an old hand. Now, the lead character in this movie is this man here. Now, to me, he looked very much like John Wayne, but it's very much not John Wayne. It is a man called Lou Ayres, and he was born in 1908 and he died in 1996, so not that long ago really. Now, the old hand is this man here, which you may have seen in some American gangster movies, because he seems quite familiar to me. But Louis Volheim, or Walheim, depending on how you want to pronounce it, born in 1880 and died in 1931. So actually, wow, he died the following year from the release of the movie. He's their kind of father figure. He adjusts them very quickly from their training, because training to be a soldier is very different to actually being a soldier, and any of you soldiers out there, you will know that very much. So he prepares them as best he can for what to expect when the shells come raining in, which ones to duck from and which ones are going to go overhead to behind the lines. And there's scenes in their dugout, in the trenches. There's sort of living quarters, if you want to call it that, where they're just being repeatedly shelled, and all the dust is coming from the rafters, and the whole set shakes. Whereas today, you know, in modern times, they'll use gimbals and all those sorts of things to perhaps be in a submarine or something, or I'm not quite sure how they built this set and how it shook and everything, but obviously all the sound lined up with the whistling of the shells coming in, and then the explosion, and the set would shake and the dust would fall, and it's quite relentless. It's quite impressive how they did this, and so what I noticed and what I remembered was most of the sound. So obviously the sound of the shells coming in would be put on post-production, and the music would be done post-production. But what I remembered was all the sounds of them in their military gear and their weapons and everything, and all their dialogue is in camera. So what we know today, films for today, I'd say about 80% of the audio you hear is done in post-production. Even all the dialogue and the sound of someone putting a cup down or closing a door, all those sort of touchy-feely sounds are done afterwards by 2 Foley artists. And as I said, the dialogue is all replaced. All the actors have to go in and react their lines and try and have the same emotion that they did whilst they were acting on set. But this dialogue replacement and Foley didn't really come about until I think the 50s, if I remember rightly. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But so there's definitely one scene where they're visiting one of their wounded soldiers, and they're with the doctor, and they're talking to camera, and then they turn away to go back to the patient, but they're still talking. But I could still hear all their dialogue, even though it got quieter as they went away from the microphone and the camera. And of course, back then they wouldn't have been able to do as many takes as they can nowadays. I mean, you can do endless takes now with obviously digital filming, excuse me, but they wouldn't have had necessarily reams and reams of film to film on, and they wouldn't have had endless camera angles to capture what they were filming. So to see what they filmed, the production value is just, to me, it's incredible. So what else did I put? Yes, there was one of the battle scenes, the trench warfare scenes, because obviously we associate most of World War I with trenches. They seem to undercrank the camera to give it that authentic World War I footage look, where everyone's moving a bit too quickly because of the low frame rate. And that really added to the intensity of that scene. So when I said about the 3D nature of the picture, and the sort of the depth, you know, that's in the image, there is a standard definition version on here. So it's the same, exactly the same film, exactly the same footage, but it's a silent version. So you have the cards come up on screen with the dialogue. Now, I had a brief look at this the other night, and the picture in standard definition is much flatter. So if you haven't seen this before and you purchase either this copy, I imagine most copies have both cuts of the film, have a look at the silent version first, and then when you go and watch the nice cleaned up restored high definition version, just see how much depth is in the picture. Now if you don't see any depth in the picture, then your display is set up incorrectly, and you need to either get a setup disc or find someone who knows how to set the brightness and the contrast to get these things correct, because it looks almost 3D without it being 3D. Now onto the remake, 1979 remake, which is in colour. Obviously very different filmmakers, and it'll be a different script writer obviously, and clearly different actors, and they'll have a different twist on things. So the rousing speech at the beginning of the 1931 is done in a different way, and it's done slightly later in the film. So the film opens with a battle scene. I mean, what better way to start a war film than with an intense battle scene? But the rousing speech I found, which is done by Donald Pleasance's character. Those of you know him from Halloween, or of course playing Blofeld in James Bond. And also in this version, the old hand is played by Ernst Borgnine, and all of you who are around my age will know him from Airwolf, amongst other films and productions. But Ian Holm is the postman who becomes their drill instructor in this version of the film, and you know, famed for his role as Ash in Alien, and many other amazing roles. He's in The Fifth Element and that sort of thing. But so the rousing speech from Donald Pleasance I found not as rousing. I found it slightly dulled down, and I found some of the other sort of glorification aspects of what these young lads were going to go into a little bit dulled down. And I suddenly thought, it's post World War II, and you know, here we are, we've had yet a second global conflict, where the protagonist is from the same country, and maybe I'm reading too much into that, I don't know, but there was an element of, yeah, not quite glorifying it so much, because in this version there's a scene where the lead character, he goes on leave because he'd been injured, and he goes back to visit the school he came from, and the teacher is in there. Guess what? He's giving another rousing speech to another classroom of young men, as the war goes on, and you know, they need to go and fight for their country. And he asks, the character's name is Paul Baum. So Paul is asked to speak to the students. So he's very honest. He says it's not going to be glorious, what you're hearing here, and he really tells them what it's like and how horrific it is. But get this up the right way. In this version, it's done differently. They get the rousing speech, and the students leave the class. Then Paul goes in to see the teacher, and I just thought, maybe they've dumbed it down a little bit, and I fully understand. But some of the aspects of this film are done in a slightly different order to this version. Doesn't take anything away from it. The acting in this one is more theatrical, more sort of romantically delivered, and what you think of old black and white films when you see these old black and white films, and how the cheekiness and the gaiety and just the general nature of filmmaking back then. And then this one is probably a little bit more realistic in its delivery. It's a bit drier, it's less theatrical, it's maybe not as intense. I think the fact that I watched them very close to each other, this one just did not have the same impact on me as the black and white version. But if you haven't seen either film, it may be worth watching this one first, so because it's more modern, and maybe you may be more accustomed to watching a more modern film, then watch this one first and get the full impact of it, because you won't have any expectations. But then if you really like that and you're curious about the old version, you know, the 90-year-old version, or the nearly 90-year-old version, then find yourself a copy of this and watch this. But so I think I made some other notes. Oh yes, there is another well-known actor in this, Michael Sheard, who you may have seen in Indiana Jones playing a certain Adolf Hitler, who also played Hitler in one of the many Dirty Dozen films. But I remember him mostly not from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, as Admiral Ozzel, but as Mr. Bronson in Grange Hill. So yeah, that's kind of showing my age again. But he plays Paul Baum's father in this film, and you know, he does a very good job, and it's nice to see him doing a different role again. So what else did I put? In this version, there is a scene with the gas masks, which doesn't happen in the black and white version. Now obviously that must be one of the pretty scary things. It's all well and good hearing a shell come over, but if it's gas, yes, you can see the gas, but it's going to be a more horrific death, suffering from the effects of the gas, than it is being blown to bits. You know, not very nice. But yeah, the scene portrays the use of the masks very well, and the unfortunate demise of, well, I say demise, he gets stretchered off, but one of the new recruits, and how the young soldiers just don't quite have it in their head. He loses his helmet, he goes into a crater where they've already just explained that the gas will pool in the bottom of the crater, so they just got out of the crater before it really took hold, and they were able to take their masks off. But because his helmet falls in, he just goes in after it and doesn't think. So that was something different, and I thought was really nicely done. And the other weird thing I found, because we're so used to watching World War I footage in black and white, was the colours of the uniforms. The French are in blue, and you know, the Germans are in green. And obviously you don't see any British troops, and they only mention the American troops. But I just found it a little bit odd, because, as I said, all of the World War I footage I've seen it's generally been black and white and very gritty and very damaged, and unlike the somewhere up there I've got the Peter Jackson documentary, where he's coloured in very nicely, actually, some footage and added dialogue where they've, I imagine, used lip readers to try and understand what they're saying, and added, you know, better sound effects to basically exactly how you would shoot a movie today. They've just taken the raw footage and then done post-production on it. So yes, seeing this in colour, although it was really good, was just a little odd and took me most of the film to get used to. Yeah, that appears to be all my notes on both of these films. So, verdict is, I like this one more. To me, it just had a bigger impact. Probably more authenticity for a different reason, because as I said, it's very theatrically acted. You know, if you know about seeing plays at the theatre and how different the acting is, because they have to project their voice and everything, and compared to when you're watching a movie and you can, from having much bigger setups and lighting and makeup and close-ups from the camera, you don't have to be so theatrical. So the colour version, as I said, probably has another kind of authenticity in that it is a lot more stripped back and probably a lot more natural in its delivery. But yeah, as I said, maybe because I've seen them so close together, this one just had more impact. Like I said, with the rousing speech at the beginning, just to contrast what they're about to go through. So it's not to glorify war. It's not as a, you know, propaganda thing or anything. It's literally just, this is how they were duped into going into battle, and only to find horrifically what it really is like. And so, you know, we remember them, and we should always remember them. But nowadays, obviously, Armistice Day is not just about World War One. It's about any conflict. So World War Two being a very prominent one, and anything that's happened since World War One. So if you have any relatives who have fought in any of these conflicts, or you have relatives, or you're a soldier yourself and you've had fallen comrades, always remember, you know, they gave our lives so we could live ours. And it's, you know, something I like to commemorate every year. I generally watch a World War II film because that's more my subject, is World War II. But this year I felt it appropriate that I watch All Quiet on the Western Front. And saying that, at the end of this version of the film, they do a kind of a mock German communique where I guess the armistice has been signed, the guns had fallen silent, and the communique said, "All quiet on the Western Front." That's where the title comes from, the end of the conflict. So that's quite fitting. Two very good films. So that's the review part. So in my trailer, if you've seen the trailer for the channel, I mentioned that I would have a little kind of guessing game where I post a link to a YouTube video of a song from a band I like that has used a movie clip in their song, a soundbite. And I won't give the results of that yet because I doubt many people have seen or even had a go, and it would be nice to have some comments in the comment section, obviously, about the review and what you think of the films, or if you didn't know that there was an original 1930 version, or if you didn't know about the remake. Any comments you have about other movie pairs, obviously I have loads here. I've got about 80 at the moment in my collection, so that's, you know, 160 films I need to watch. But leave any comments, and I shall leave the link again for the same song that was in the trailer, and I'll give you the time code, so if you don't like the song you don't have to listen to it all. You can go straight to the time code and try and work out what movie it's from, and let me know in the comments. And then once I've perhaps had enough comments, I'll let you know if you're right, and I'll pick another song for you to have another guess at. So yeah, please like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on this journey. This is only episode 2. I will try and get better at getting these out. It's 1, finding the time to watch 2 films, and 2, at the moment I'm having some energy problems, and I'm very tired a lot, but that's not a bad thing. That situation has passed, but I won't go into it now. I mean, ask me in the comments, and I'll put in the comments why, but and maybe if enough of you want to know, I'll just do a little brief video as to why. But yeah, thank you for watching. I hope it was informative, and I hope to see you in the next video. Take it easy.